Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
Absolutely nothing. I don't take pictures on my phone unless I absolutely have to. I don't run around with the phone faced toward me or faced outward taking pictures because I would rather have the experience than have my face in an object. My parents used to take a lot of photos, and it seemed to me they were always missing the great stuff because they were busy trying to get the perfect shot. And I've got their photograph albums when they cleaned out their house, when Dad cleaned out the house after Mom died. He sent me all the photograph albums, and I haven't even looked at them. I enjoy other people's photographs, especially professional ones. I certainly enjoy bird photography and wildlife photography, but as far as I'm concerned, nope. It's a gigantic nope.
Mercedes, I love it. Everybody answers the question differently. If anything, even that position of, you know what, I don't, just as you take, is an interesting position. So, of course, thank you for joining me on the podcast. It's taken us a few months, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it has. It's not been a good year.
Well, first of all, we have the photographs from quite a few months ago. And yeah, I understand it's been a very difficult time.
Oh, you don't know the half of it.
No, I'm sure because I'm not in your shoes. I'm not sure. All I know are the I think 11 emails we exchanged. So maybe I'll get to know 1/100th of it, let alone half of it. But at the end of the conversation, hopefully we will have shared something profound.
I'm in.
Okay.
Or you listen to me kvetch for a solid hour.
I love kvetching. It's part of my heritage. What's the problem? This one's called Headshot with Ikaika. Am I saying it right? Ikaika? Ikaika.
That's my baby girl that I lost.
Yeah.
She just meant everything to me.
No, I understand that 100%.
I had her for 29 years.
Yeah.
Which is literally longer than anybody I've been with. You know, you grow up, at about 20, you leave your parents, so you're not really with them anymore. And the same goes for your siblings. And she was with me longer than anybody except my husband.
That's actually utterly profound. So let me describe the image because people are listening, and this is theater of the mind. So the image is of you seated on a sofa. It looks like it could be a leather sofa. It could be pea green, and behind the wall is flat. So the background is quite clean. You're seated with a hat, like a quasi fedora, sitting on your head, tilted a little bit. You have a ponytail. Do you have a ponytail now? Oh, there it is. There it is. Very nice. A nice look. A very nice look. That almost looks like a beret. You're wearing a red shirt, and your expression is warm and open, and like I'd say like the hint of a smile, maybe, but on your shoulder is...
That is a umbrella cockatoo.
Umbrella. Okay, I was going to say a sulfur. So I meant sulfur, not Rufus. Okay, umbrella cockatoo. Okay, Ikaika. Now I understand that when I asked you to send me 4 photos and you're going to frame the conversation, I understood that at the time it was literally, I think, the week or 2, right? And as you say, she's like your profound companion. I'm seeing your face now on the video. So how old were you, or was she when you got her?
She was about 2. She
Okay.
was. We decided we were going to get parrots.
Okay.
And we had been raptor rehabbers for quite some time before that. The thing is, when you're a rehabber, there's 2 things going on. One is that you do not get attached to the birds.
Okay.
Because most rehabbers are happy if they've got a 50% survival rate. You get these birds and they're either so sick that they allow people to pick them up, or they're injured. And the injuries are usually not something they can survive.
Right.
And so you don't get attached to the birds, and you're going to be letting them go anyway.
Yep.
You don't want them to keep coming back. So we wanted birds we could get attached to. And this couple was moving from Tulsa, a standard house in Tulsa, into backcountry in Arkansas. Not entirely off the grid, but the only heating in this cabin they were moving into was a wood stove. And they were very much afraid that the smoke was going to harm the bird. So we went over, had a look at her, and she just took to us immediately. And we walked out with a bird.
Okay. For the people who are listening, and like me, the context that I have is you're seated on what seems to be an office chair. The lighting is from above. You seem to be in a kind of an office room with a lot of...
It's my office room, but behind me, or behind the chair, are several hundred spools of ribbon and trim.
Yeah.
It looks like a haberdashery back there, and that's because it is. I also work on my hobby of costuming dolls here.
For the listener, from my side, they might hear a bit of traffic because I happen to live on a road where there's a lot of traffic. But from your side, you close the porch doors, but there are the sounds of birds. How many birds do you have in the house?
I have a dozen. About half of them are rescues.
Wow.
Because once we got our parrots, our initial couple of parrots, things would happen. People would ask us if we wanted to take a bird because they couldn't keep it anymore. 2 or 3 of the birds we got via my vet.
Mm-hmm.
Because in one case, the bird was abandoned there. And he had been very severely abused.
Oh.
And the sight of a broom would make him fling himself down into the bottom of the cage and go huddle in the far corner.
Oh, wow. What?
Yeah, somebody beat him with a broom.
What?
I know.
Okay, so my problem in doing these episodes with these fascinating people like you is I have to rein in all of the questions that I have and then just pick one of them because I have so many for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so share with the world your love of caring for birds and why. I mean, so for example, I've had lots of dogs and lots of cats, and I understand animals, like I befriend animals very easily and all this stuff. But make real for somebody who's listening, like, why is caring for these birds such a profound experience for you?
Well, with the raptors, which we don't do the raptor rehab anymore. I'm 72. Larry's not nearly that old, but he's got the body of a 72-year-old man.
You're 72?
Yes, he's got.
You're looking good.
He's got ankylosing spondylitis, so his spine is slowly degenerating. Yeah,
Oh.
it's an arthritis of the spine, basically. So we can't go traipsing through 5 acres of wait a minute bushes to get to birds anymore. I mean, because the worst rescue we had, thank God we had our buddy Ben Olander with us. He is spent a lot of time in the military, was an officer in the Marines, and way more physically fit than us. And we had a situation with a red-tailed hawk that had been electrocuted 5 feet from her nest.
Oh.
And, well, the fortunate thing is it was right on the property of an American Airlines repair facility. And they were keeping an eye on the nest. And they called me and said, the boy is trying, but he doesn't know how to take care of the babies. Can you get out here? Because I think we think they're going to die. So we got out there, and it's about a 50-foot climb up a tree to a nest at the very, very tippy top.
Oh, wow. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I looked at Larry, and Larry looked at me, and we looked at each other, and Ben said, "Oh, that's easy." And away he went. We got a basket and a rope, and he took them both up the tree, and he borrowed some kind of web harness from one of the avionics guys. I have no idea why they would wear it, but apparently it was something that they had lying around the shop. He used that as his climbing harness, and they supplied us with a couple of ropes, and we had the basket. Up he went, got the birds, came back down.
Wow.
Yeah. But what the thing is that I have had lots of dogs. I've had cats. I still do have cats, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
The intelligence level of the parrots is such that, and the fact that they're flock birds is such that they can make very powerful emotional attachments to you.
Mm-hmm.
And even when they're biting the crap out of me, I wouldn't have it any other way. Now, with the rehabbing, the reward was always in the moment of release.
Yeah.
The big reward, the big payoff is always in the moment of release. Then there are lots of little payoffs, like when you're taking care of babies. Babies are always cute. Everyone loves babies. Even when they're screaming at you for food. But with the parrots, these are creatures that can and do tell you in words, "I love you," and they know what it means.
Right.
Ikaika used to have a trick. Cockatoos don't speak well. They do speak, but they don't speak well. African greys are the big winners there. So she would tend to use words, a limited vocabulary, but a lot of inflection.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she'd curl her head up under her chin, under my chin like this, and just press her head into the hollow of my throat and go, "I love you."
Oh, dude.
And then if she saw something you were eating that she wanted, start out with, "I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Give me some of that."
You're telling me this extremely sweet story, and I understand how basically you've been mourning. You've been mourning your companion's passing.
Yes.
And hopefully, I mean, recognizing and coming to a certain acceptance that I mean, it's a profound loss. And one of the people I had on the podcast, Monica Borschel, talks about like I think her master's or her PhD was in grieving and trauma. And for the people who don't know, who haven't had the connection with, take a moment. Do you have tissues near you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so obviously heartfelt, and it's a profound experience. And I hear you.
It kind of, it's also, it's rolled up into all the losses we've all had during this pandemic.
Yes.
You know, we lost a good friend to COVID.
Oh,
I haven't
no.
seen my father in 2.5 years because he's in Tucson, and up until very recently, they weren't even letting people into his building.
Your father is still with us.
Yeah, he's 95.
Well, respect. He must be so tough.
He is a tough man. And he is a wonderful man. But yeah, it's kind of all rolled up. The grief is kind of all rolled up in that.
Yeah. Well, look, let's move on, because the format is that we can only spend a few minutes, a very short phase looking at these little glimpses, and hopefully somebody who's listening will hear something that touches them as well, because anybody who's had actually a companion, if you've had a companion and you've lost a companion who you love, that's what it is. And
loves you back, and you know it. It's a two-way connection there. I think probably the closest that a non-bird lover would have would they might understand with a service animal. Same thing.
Right. Or a best friend. Really.
Yeah, she really was my best friend.
Yeah. Well, look, let's move on to the next photo. Oh, you're pulling on my heartstrings. Okay, let's move on to the next photo. Mercedes. Wow. This is okay. Is this an illustration? So what it is an image where the background is just pure white, and the foreground, it's almost like an illustration or a painting or an image, because the detail is amazing, of these two birds of prey. I don't know them well enough to say with confidence if they're hawks or some kind of raptor.
I'd have to look it up myself because I don't have the photos in front of me.
So it's these two, it's a pair, these very dark, maybe they're kind of eagle. It looks like a photograph, but it could also easily be an incredible illustration of these two birds on this very, very old piece of wood that has no bark on it. It's just very weathered. They're both looking to the right, I guess, and you could see their beaks with the sharpness of the beak, and you see the talons, and it's very, very dramatic. Why would we start with this image?
Those are Harris hawks.
Harris hawks. Okay. What? I don't know. I know nothing about Harris hawks. School me.
Okay. Harris hawks are a type of hawk. They are native to the southern part of North America, Mexico, and down into South America. And they are the only birds of prey that are social.
Oh.
And
what?
Yeah, birds of prey are not social animals.
But I thought I've seen tons of eagles congregating together. Or are they just feeding together, but they're not social?
Not feeding together. They're not socializing.
Ah.
They do not form flocks at all. In fact, that's very unnatural behavior to have them all at once, except in certain feeding grounds.
Right.
We've got bald eagles here in Oklahoma, and there's a spot down below a dam where fish come over the dam and they're stunned, and that's where the bald eagles come to feed.
Right.
But that's an unnatural situation.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, what happens is birds of prey pair off. Some mate for life, some don't. Some, like Cooper's hawks, are little sluts.
Hey, this is a kid's show. It's a kid's show. No, I'm just joking. It's not a kid's show. It's not a kid's show. That's great. I love it.
Sluts. They are sluts. Oh, man. Because not only will the male, once the female is established in the nest, not only will the male go off and try and say, hey, baby, to a bunch of other females who may be on other nests.
Yeah.
But other males will come visit her.
Got it.
Sluts.
Well, it keeps the genetic pool very, very rich.
It certainly does. But those are Harris hawks, and they not only mate for life, but they are social birds, and they work in groups. It's usually a family group, although there are a bunch of falconers from Louisiana who have Harris hawks. That the only time the birds ever see each other is when everybody goes out to a falconry meet, and they put the birds up together, and the birds hunt together cooperatively. Okay. That's what's really amazing about them. They will hunt together cooperatively, which is especially good on very tough prey like a jackrabbit.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the Louisiana Arclight Squad in action, hunting jackrabbits, which are really tough. And the birds will go up in the air, and any other bird, if you put other birds of prey up in the air, one of them would end up as a meal for the other.
Okay.
It's guaranteed. But they put the Harris hawks up in the air, and the first hawk will, once the prey is flushed, the first hawk will make his dive. The second hawk is already lining up. The first hawk comes in, his feet are what they call fisted, where the talons are all curled up inside the foot. And he will knock that jackrabbit on the back of the head and send it tumbling and bounce up off the recoil momentum and get out of the way so the jack doesn't kick him. The second hawk is already halfway down there. He'll do the same thing. And only when the jack stops kicking and is stunned will the hawk come in and actually make the kill.
Wow.
And then they'll share the food. That's really wow. That's a big thing.
No, it is. I mean, I'm learning. I mean, this is great.
The reason I sent you that is because I kind of feel like Larry and I are a pair of Harris hawks.
Okay. Why is that? How so? Who's the jackrabbit?
Books.
Okay.
Stalking our books, and we are killing our books.
Yeah. All I can do, and it's an experiment in human dynamics or connection, because I specifically don't research in advance who I'm going to talk to, because I like the sort of the chemistry of just meeting and talking to somebody. And here are some of the things that I've noticed. One is that you have a very perceptive way about you. Like, knowing, for example, being so sensitive to birds and to commit to rescuing them says a lot about the kind of person you are in terms of your empathy. And I felt it. I felt it in our conversation already that you're deeply empathic. And then you send me this other image of these two Harris hawks, and you've got a solid grasp of the knowledge of the background. And so I'm kind of hearing a little bit that you're an author of sorts, which I think is why we connected. And so I'm sort of thinking, like, are you a scientific writer? Are you... Yeah, I'm really interested in understanding how your brain works.
I've written 145 books, mostly fantasy, and they're all All but one is published by a traditional publisher.
Okay. Maybe I'm slow. You've written 145 books.
Yep. That's what I do.
That's one of the many things you do, such as beyond rescuing raptors and beyond caring for a house full of animals. 145 books.
Yep. Been published since 1982. And I am extraordinarily lucky to be one of the few people that can make a living from this.
You are extraordinarily impressive. That's amazing. Okay, so for somebody who's listening, well, how do we communicate that essence of Mercedes R Lackey? Who, am I saying your name incorrectly?
Oh, no, that's correct.
Okay. How do we communicate the essence of you that drives you? Because to write that many books, you are driven.
Pretty much, if you're going to make a living out of this, actually, if you're going to do more than just try to write a book, there's a thing in you that says, I have these stories, they must get out of me, and I must write them.
A compulsion.
Very much a compulsion. You couldn't do this day in, day out for, what is it, since 1982? That's 40 years. Couldn't do that for 40 years if you weren't compelled to write. And I was writing what we would call fan fiction now. They didn't have a name for it when I was a kid. But I was writing fan fiction back when I was I think I started when I was like 11 or 12.
Oh, wow. I'm still trying to get my head around this. You've written 145 books. Yeah. Okay, wait. How long is each book?
Some of them are with collaborators.
Okay.
Which is usually faster than alone, but.
Oh, well, for sure. And if you could put an average number, 75, 100, 200 pages.
They're usually around between 100,000 and 120,000 words. We've had a couple that were bigger than that. We've got a superhero series I did with some collaborators where the average size of the book was 250,000 words.
What is that in pages, page count, roughly? Sorry.
Well, that's the thing. Page count is not what a publisher goes on because it'll vary on your manuscript depending upon what font you use and what font size you use, and it'll vary in the printed version again depending upon what type they use and what typeface they use and whether or not it's a hardback or a paperback.
Yeah.
But I would say it's a pretty standard size for a fantasy book.
Yeah, like 175 pages roughly, I'm assuming.
Something like about 200 pages in a book.
Mercedes, I'm in court with a master. That's amazing.
Well,
respect.
I just got named a SIFWA Grand Master this year, so.
Okay, well, there we go.
That's the Science Fiction Writers of Association, and Grand Mastership is over a body of work rather than an award for a specific work. Right.
Okay, well, now we can move on to the next photo because I'm dying to figure it out. It's going to be something bonkers. I know it's going to be something crazy.
Probably, since you didn't know what I did for a living. You'll find it very crazy.
Well, look, it's more about, it's really two people meeting and exchanging in a conversation knowledge and learning and having, maybe the format is ridiculous and dumb, but some people really love it. So
then it's not dumb.
Okay.
If people like it, it's not dumb. Some people think romances are dumb, but romance is the best-selling category in all of literature, so.
Yes. So this is an illustration. It's called White Griffin. In the illustration, it looks like a carefully a lot of airbrushing, maybe a digital work. It's a fantasy.
It's not.
It's painted.
That is a cover of the book, The White Griffin, the middle book in a trilogy that I did with my husband.
Okay.
And it is by an artist named Jody Lee, and she does all her work physically with colored pencil.
That's amazing.
You should go over to her website. Your jaw will drop. She does these beautiful paintings, and they're all in colored pencil.
That's amazing. So what it is the main subject in the image is this massive griffin. So it's like half, I don't know, like size of a horse, head of an eagle, large wings, 4 legs with talons. What else? So we've got a kind of protagonist with like an 8-pack stomach with like these like nice little like MC Hammer pants.
Because everyone loves a pretty boy.
Of course. Very pretty boy with his hair blowing in the wind. He's doing something odd with his left hand, his right hand. He's looking off to the right, and behind there's like a gag, like a few people, I guess they're like officers or something, holding up a spear, and then another one who looks like some kind of it was in a kind of fantasy background set or background.
It is indeed.
And so there's like spires in the background, the sky, the dominant color. It's a very warm image with colors of purples and oranges. It's beautifully done. It's really beautifully done. And what I like is people can go on the website and look at, or on the YouTube and see these images. Okay, so walk us through.
This is the cover of White Griffin. The first book is Black Griffin. The second book is White Griffin. The third book is Silver Griffin. And They are person, place, and organization. The Black Griffin, this person, is actually that one in the picture, because he went through a very traumatic experience, nearly died, and it turned all his feathers white.
Oh, okay.
And that is him and the traumatic experience ended up with, it was in the middle of a war, and it was a very catastrophic end to the war, and the populace of their particular country literally scattered to the 4 winds to avoid essentially a nuclear explosion, magical type.
Mm-hmm.
And that bunch that were with the Black Griffin ended up on a seacoast that they thought was uninhabited. It was not. And they are encountering and negotiating with the people called the Haile, who are named after Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, yeah.
And they're negotiating to be allowed to stay. And the background city is the Haile city.
Okay.
They are a very sophisticated people.
We're looking at the dedication. So walk us through your aesthetic development, your appeal, you gravitated to this form. When did this kind of start occurring to you as the path to expression that you wanted to pursue?
Well, I love science fiction and fantasy. And my father loved science fiction and fantasy, and my parents would let me read anything that was lying around the house. And that's how I discovered science fiction in the first place, was picking up one of his paperbacks. And, this was back in the dark ages when dinosaurs roamed the earth and we were chiseling books out on stones. So they were not being produced anywhere near as fast as I could read them. I cleaned out what little there was in the children's section and pretty much cleaned out whatever there was in the adult section of the library. My mom advocated with me for me with the librarian to get me an adult library card so I could check out anything I wanted.
Right. What city was this?
This was a little city called Highland, Indiana.
Okay. That's
up in the Hammond, Gary, northwest corner of Indiana. And obviously there was no Amazon. There was not the proliferation of bookstores that there was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah.
So about the only way I could get books that weren't in the library was to mail order them. So I would have to save up my allowance, my tiny allowance, and mail it off to the address in the back of the paperback and
right.
Pick up another book. And so they were not producing, or I could not buy these things fast enough to satisfy my reading urges. So I started writing them.
Wow.
And it was mostly based on the work of Andre Norton, who I was fortunate enough to work with later in my career.
Oh, wow.
She became a very, very dear friend, and I miss her greatly.
Mm-hmm.
And she was an amazing, amazing woman. But yeah, that's how I ended up writing. And even then, I think I was aware in the back of my mind it was unlikely I was going to make a living at writing. So that was never on my mind. But what was on my mind was I'd like to get published someday.
Right.
And I did once I discovered that what I was doing was called fan fiction, and this was back in the days of the paper zines when they actually printed this stuff out and sent it around to all the contributors and all of the subscribers. So I did about 4 or 5 years worth of fan writing in the fanzines. And I finally said to myself, after reading a couple of really, really bad science fiction fantasy books,
mm-hmm.
I can do better than that. I'm going to try and get published.
Nice.
That's when I was working towards getting published. And I started with short stories and then moved into novels.
That's amazing. What kind of community did you have around you so clearly your parents were very supportive.
Absolutely.
Like, could you describe how else you got it's not really courage, but you got the sort of the chutzpah, like the sort of like that, just say, you know what, I'm just going to do it. Like how else did you get that?
There's a certain amount of chutzpah there. It's because I got hooked up with the science fiction and fantasy community, and also the role players and RPGs game players.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing Dungeons and Dragons. I did Dungeons and Dragons back when it was called Greyhawk, and it was a bunch of hand-stapled mimeographed pages that got sold only in game stores and gaming bookstores.
Right.
So, yeah, I just got hooked up with the community, and the community itself was very supportive of that sort of thing. There was infighting and that kind of stuff back then too, but I think it was, on the whole, I think it was nicer than it is today.
Yeah, I think now everybody's really competing in a way that
the fandom has become kind of toxic.
Okay.
The stuff that's going on now would not have been allowed.
Right.
People would have been shunned. They would not been allowed to go to conventions. They'd have been turned away at the door.
One thing that's really interesting, I don't know if you're aware of this, but what's funny is that it's almost like there's a very, very short delay between when you speak and then your birds behind you who can hear you are just like,
they're answering me.
Yeah, they're just like, when she's talking, she's talking.
They're trying to initiate a conversation. One of them in particular is yeah, that's Marty.
Yeah.
That's little Marty. He's going, hey, I'm here. You're supposed to be taking care of me right now.
Right.
It's exactly like a toddler going, Mom, Mom,
yeah.
Mom, 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 Mom.
He's gonna break you. He's gonna try.
Nope. We've had these guys for, well, Ikaika was the longest, obviously, but we've had them for decades, and they haven't broken us.
Okay.
We will.
Okay, well, we're looking at White Griffin. I'm learning a lot about fantasy. Okay, so like I love where this is going. Shall we go on to the next image? These conversations go bam so fast. But you want to say something else about White Griffin? Do you want to?
It's part of my Valdemar trilogy, and that's going to lead into the next trilogy. Part of my Valdemar series. That's going to lead into the next image.
Have you been called the Stephen King of fantasy?
Actually, Isaac Asimov wrote 200 books.
Ah.
Jane Yolen has written 400.
Wow. They call Stephen King the Mercedes R Lackey of horror.
Huh. Yeah, I'm very fast. If they don't burn out, there are some up-and-coming writers that are that fast now.
Amazing.
But the trick is whether they can sustain it.
Okay, so it's not a photo. It's an illustration. So let me just describe it. It's called Valdemap.
Yeah, Valdemar map.
Okay, Valdemar map. And so essentially it's a map.
Yep.
And on the top left, the map is quite complex. It's got like the features, the sort of topography. It looks almost like there's ocean areas, and then it looks like it's got like various rivers and forest area. Looking at closer, it says Valdemar and the territories of northern central Valgarth. This is quite a complex illustration, so why don't you walk us through this?
That basically covers almost all of the known world in my Valdemar series.
Okay.
I say almost all. We have a couple inserts of the coastal area where White Griffin and the Highley are. And I think, I'm trying to remember if I went farther south after that map was done. I don't think I did. No, that's pretty much everything that's been described in the books right now.
Oh, wow. How much of what you do is, I mean, just to keep the continuity right, without, accidentally saying something that is kind of wrong. Like you with that many books, do you have somebody who does fact checking for you?
Yeah, I got a couple of people that do that for me. And my editors have got copy editors that are really, really familiar with the series. So they generally can catch me on stuff.
Sure.
But for the most part, it's thank God there's the internet, because fans are obsessive about this stuff, and they make websites and they concatenate information, and I can basically, if I forget something, I can basically go Google it and find a fan site.
Amazing.
It's got it down in detail.
Amazing.
And thank God for fans.
So when you are writing, in terms of the process, and you're sitting down and you're writing, like, I guess there are two questions I have to ask. One is, what is the process or the habit that you've created over time. Because at this point, it's basically, it's muscle memory. It's your body in terms of how you sit in the chair. It's how you type. It's all muscle memory in there. And then how much of it is just going with feeling, intuition, just kind of free flowing?
I'm very methodical.
Clearly.
Start with about a 1-sentence basic idea about where I'm taking a book. I expand that to a paragraph. I expand that to about a 4-paragraph synopsis. Then I expand that to a 10-page short outline, and then I expand that to a 40-page outline. So the creation part happens during the outlining.
Yes, yes.
And this is why I can do up to 4 books a year.
Wow.
When you distill the creation to an outline, you don't get lost in the details.
Sure.
Then when you start to actually write, you can concentrate on filling in those details, but you've got a roadmap for where to go.
Right.
So you don't get lost trying to figure out where do I go next. It kind of breaks the process down into two main stages, and that's what makes it even possible.
How did that emerge? You didn't start doing that, so how did that emerge over time?
I worked with a mentor, C.J. Cherry, who is really, really fabulous science fiction writer, and we met at conventions, and that would get into a whole other digression, which I won't go into because you're already probably going to go over time. Short form, there's a lot of after hours singing and of science fiction and fantasy type folk songs at conventions, and I happened to be a fairly big name in that, and she wanted to be in it. So our positions were kind of reversed at the time. She was the big name author. I've got a few short stories out, but our positions were reversed. I was the big name filker, and she was just the beginner who wanted to get in. And I was very cognizant of the fact that everybody starts somewhere, and they're probably all shy when they get in and they want to get into the circle and sing. So I would encourage all the newbies, and I would sometimes pass on my turn to pick somebody who was new. Mm-hmm. And that's how we became friends. And she said, after a while, she said, "You write?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And she says, "Have you written a book?" I said, "Yeah, I have." And she said, "Can I see it?" And I said, "No." The reason I said that was because if she really wanted to do a critique of it, I wanted to be sure she was doing it wasn't a pity fuck, okay?
Yeah. Got it.
So she asked me 3 times. On the 3rd time, I said yes, and then she was absolutely merciless. It was wonderful. The pages were bleeding.
Mercedes, you are the best. You're the best. You tell fantastic stories. Your vocabulary is top notch. And you delivered. Wow, that was great. I did not expect to hear the phrase pity fuck in this conversation. Well done. Well done.
Get very salty. At 70, I figure I'm allowed to get salty.
Hey, listen, no fucks to give. Just go 100%. I love it. I love it.
Not one single fuck to give. Wherein I grow my fucks. Look now and see that it is barren.
You're a nutter. You're a fucking nutter. Okay, so we are seated around the fire. Right now we're having, imagine a metaphorical fire. We're sitting around the fire. You walked us through just this tiniest hint of what drives you, what interests you. And there's definitely a connection in terms of how you express yourself, and then also the care of rescuing these birds who are like profoundly intelligent and sentient, and yet your job is to record this concept, like the whole notion of sentience, right? Like, so you're thinking, you're imagining, you're recording this thought, and you're also connecting to these birds, right? So I've just thrown a whole bunch of sentences at you. Can you weave your magic to make some kind of statement about why it is that in your life, your energy is manifested to express yourself in this way?
I think it's because I'm by nature an introvert. I'm fine when I'm talking to a couple of people, but I very quickly get overwhelmed when there's more than 3 or 4 people in a group.
Yeah.
And the birds themselves are not demanding of anything but care and affection.
Right.
And that allows me to be free to give that back to them in ways that they understand, which are nonverbal.
Okay.
So that's probably why such empathy as I have is connected to the birds, and that's probably why I express it in the written word rather than go out and be an actor.
On the one hand, there's this dynamic of the nonverbal, right? The nonverbal communication with an animal. And I mean, you know, in terms of levels, right? Like, I imagine a sort of sulfur cockatoo and, you know, it being at a much higher level, for example, of expression than, let's just say, like a dog, and maybe at this on par with a dolphin or whatever. So on the one hand, that experience is very meaningful, but on the other hand, you spend an enormous amount of time of your life, of your energy, recording your verbal communication so others can connect to it. So there's nothing introverted.
I don't have to be with them when I'm doing that.
Yeah, that's the thing with people. It's much better if you don't have to be with them.
Yeah. I like people at a distance.
Yeah, exactly. Mercedes, this is great. Yeah, thank you so much. You at the age of 15 years old comes to you, sits at the fire, sits next to you. And you turn to her, and what do you tell her?
Well, the first thing, just let her tell me about herself. And I just let the conversation go from there.
Okay.
If she wants to know something about me, I'll talk about myself, but I'd rather listen to her. And maybe I've got some insights for her, or maybe she's got some reflections that are useful to me.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly insight into the workings of the mind of a modern 15-year-old is a whole undiscovered country for me. They're not like I was when I was 15.
But I would also argue that the more things change, the more they remain the same, because people are people are people. I kind of have that sense, maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of have that sense that the bells and whistles have changed, but fundamentally the foundation is probably the same.
Probably. It's just how it's expressed that's different.
Sure. Okay, Mercedes, thank you so much. So people, it sounds to me that within the world of the kind of writing that you do in terms of fantasy and like your name is definitely you're definitely somebody who is going to be hugely recognizable. And part of my interest with a podcast is to also open windows and doors for people who may never have discovered your work to say, okay, what is this all about? And then connect with you because of your voice and, you know, your saltiness to go out and get one of your books. So which is the great work that you've done most recently that isn't the greatest, because that never is done, but you would say is a good entranceway into this whole world that you've created?
Well, I have more than one world. I do the classic fantasy, I do high fantasy, I do urban fantasy, I do kind of a retro urban fantasy. And I've got, in the big series, I've got several entry points.
Oh, wow.
So you can go to my website, you can go and there's descriptions of the books there, and they're broken down into series. In the Velgarth and Valdemar stuff, you'll find that some of the books there are named, this is a good entry point for the series. But the one that people know the best is probably the Last Herald Mage trilogy. That's the one that they probably know best. That's the one that got a Lambda Award all the way back in the 80s. But it seems to have held up very well.
Nice.
The most recent is not in the Valdemar stuff. It's in my Elemental Masters stuff, which is kind of urban fantasy, but it's set at the turn of the 20th century in the early 1900s. And that one is called The Silver Bullets of Annie Oakley. And it's what if Annie Oakley was an actual magician, along with being a sharpshooter. So I did some pretty deep research on Annie because I wanted to get her voice absolutely right.
Right.
Then there's a couple of oddballs. There's a complete standalone trilogy that's young adult called the Hunter Trilogy that I'm very fond of. And then there's the wild card.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine and I did this crazy book called Reboots Undead Can Dance. It's about vampires, werewolves, and zombies in space. And I got the best Publishers Weekly review I have ever gotten in my life on that book.
Nice.
Absolutely amazing review from Publishers Weekly on it. So it's funny, it's fun, it's very pulpy, it's very Marvel Universe kind of thing.
Right.
It's very Deadpool.
Mercedes, thank you so much for your time. This has been, I didn't know what to expect because we were going back and forth, but this has been just all the best words: delightful, insightful. I mean, you're fun.
I try.
Well, yeah, I think just be, you're wicked. You're amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure.
Well, it's been fun for me too. I'm sorry about my little psychotic cockatoo yelling "ma, ma, ma."
That, I think, whenever people say sorry to me, my reaction is always that it's going to cost you 10 push-ups. So is that really how you want to play this? You want to tell me sorry? No. Okay. So no more sorries.
Sorry.
Okay. Exactly.
Deal with it, white boy.
Fantastic. On a great note, we'll leave it at that. Have a great night. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Okay.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.